So, good evening, sir. Good evening, classmates. So, tonight I'm going to discuss to you my report. The topic is about philosophical method, by David Wang. So, as an introduction, just a quick overview of this chapter. So, the author um, has cite here an illustrative example, to explain to the readers what is philosophy and what is philosophical method. So his example is suppose we are viewing the Mona Lisa painting, in a museum. So at the beginning of our tour, suppose that the guide ask us, what do you see in this work of art? No. So with that question we can answer, this is a portrait of a woman, or maybe we can be more technical, like we can answer to the guy that this is an oil painting on canvas, or maybe this is a painting made by um, Leonardo da Vinci, the renowned painter. So this we can say that our guide's question would not lead to answers of that in philosophical nature. It rather seeks answers. It rather seeks answer by using uh, simply our simple observation or basic know-how about that Mona Lisa painting. So then now the second situation um, in the example is, after our tour, after touring us the entire day, the guide would ask us what is a work of art. So now, armed with the answer to this question, we can exclude anything that does not belong to the category work of art. So this kind of question is a philosophical one. So it is a philosophical inquiry into the nature of art itself. So then we can define philosophy as something that seeks to uncover the first principles about specific topics for universal understanding. So, based on the example, we can say that, philosophy seeks to get to the first principles about specific topic in order for that topic to be explained in a universal applicable way. So, in the example, what are the first principles that help us recognize a work of art when we see one? So, the task of the philosopher of art then is to design a pair of philosophical eyeglasses that will help us recognize any work of art. So, then in this chapter, the author highlights the philosophical first principles that shape the interior of the medieval homes as well as the post-industrial revolution home beginning in 1850s. So Wang begins by referring to Witold description, Witold Rybczynski's description of home interiors in medieval times. So this home description includes rooms had multiple functions, and people that room ate and bathed together in the same room, and also the furniture was movable, in order to serve multiple purposes. And also, most importantly, the idea of privacy was unknown in that time. So in this situation, the historian might document examples on how privacy was not an important value of medieval times. However, in the philosopher point of view, a philosopher would ask why privacy was unknown in those times. So what first principles were active such that privacy in residential interior was a non-issue in the medieval period, while it is such a basic value for us today, in our culture nowadays. in the present. So to answer this question, to answer the question, the author introduces the idea of common sense, no? Or he abbreviates it. We can simply abbreviate it into CS, no? So here it means a communally shared outlooks, no, shaping cultural values. It is a communally shared set of outlooks that the bulk of a community takes for granted. So before we can understand how a culture defines value like privacy, we must first understand how culture defines any value, and this has to do with culture shared sense. So, eating and bathing in the same room in medieval times becomes more understandable because the first principles shaping the common sense of those times did not recognize a value term privacy. So the philosophical task is to explain the first principles that shape the culture's common sense so that privacy was not important during medieval times, uh, as Rybczynski describes. So the common sense of a culture, therefore, is significant, no? Significantly impacts the decisions people within that culture makes. So also the author cites John Long's point that designer decision are value laden or deontic ones. So this deontic means that a culture overall common sense shapes the design value, which in turn places a kind of implicit deontic mandate, an oath to in how design decisions are made. No, it is important to note that when a designer makes a decision, he or she may not be aware that the decision reflects values informed by common sense. So the decision simply reflects what the larger cultural common sense regards as good or proper. So, for instance, in today's culture, a designer can make many design decisions in accord with sustainable practices, so without consciously deciding to do so. So this is what John Lang means by deontic design decisions. So for this reason, the title of this chapter, Interior Design in Common Sense, suggests that the design comes from within the common sense of its cultural times. No, so the author compares and contrasts the interior design in common sense of two different cultural periods, as noted, as mentioned earlier. The one is medieval home interiors, that is the focus of Rybczynski's home, no, a short history of an idea. Then the period Wang consider comes from Adrian Fordy's Objects of Desire, which analyzes four stages of residential interiors beginning around 1850. So just after the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to mid 20th century. So Wang suggests that the distinct difference between the medieval home during this time, medieval home interior and its post-industrial revolution counterparts is the emergence of the awareness of the individual, no? Specifically, the emergence of the importance of private domain separated from the public realm, no? So as we read the chapter, we could note how the first principles of culture are established, you know, by reference to the historian uh, Franklin Baumer's five basic questions, no? which are uh, these are the overview of the bomber's questions: who is God, what is human being, what is nature, what is society, and what is history. So by comparing and contrasting how the medieval common sense answered these questions with how they were answered by the post industrial revolution common sense, the author not only identifies first principles but also uses the framework of these five questions to highlight differences between cultures. And also, while reading this chapter, we could note that we could also note how broad ideological developments contribute to the atmosphere of cultural common sense. So, to this end, the chapter references the Protestant Reformation, the beginnings of scientific thinking, the mass production of goods enabled by the Industrial Revolution, and in conclusion, the impact of cyber technology. Okay, so in the chapter, um, the author also mentioned the continual evolution of common sense over time. So here in this figure, figure 6.1, um, the it's like the three amoeba like blobs in figure 6.1 represent the common sense of three modern time periods, no, from left to right. So the first blob is the light solid line, no, here labeled CS Common Sense at 1966. So the diagram that does not show this blob completely. So the next blob is a bold dotted line. No, it is labeled CS at 2020. So this blob represents our cultural or our current no cultural common sense. So the third one is in the light dotted line. So this and this one is labeled CS Future to 2020. So we can now identify uh, using this figure, we can now identify the general four general traits of a common sense from the diagram. So the first trait of the common sense is that it moves through time, no? So as indicated by the large dotted arrow of time underneath the blobs. So a well-known example from cultural history provides an explanation for this. So when the Beatles debuted in the United States in 1960s, young people loved them, no? But many of their parents were appalled, no? After all, they had long hair. So in the CS 1966, the Beatles were at the cutting edge, no? See figure 6.1A here. But by 2020, they are safely, no, in the center of a common sense of 2020. So in fact, many of the Beatles songs are now considered classics. So now the second trait of any common sense is that artists in in general tend to be among the kinds of people at the leading edge, no, or cutting edge of the common sense. Again, A in figure 1 shows that the Beatles are at the leading edge, no, of the 1966 common sense. So the third trait is not all innovative ideas are received by the common sense, no. In fact, many are not. So we will never know how many are not accepted by the common sense since only their innovators thought their creations were innovative. So these unknown attempts are denoted by the dotted arrow, no? Here, with a question mark outside the common sense domain. So here. So the common sense then does a lot of filtering, no? Because common sense is a bulk community reality. To a large extent, it is blind to individual preferences. So on the one hand, designers at the leading edge of their common sense might generate new creations never before seen in the common sense. But on the other hand, there are no guarantee that the common sense will accept what the designers create. So this highlights the problem creative people often face, no? Their creations can impact culture greatly, but then it is often the case that nobody ever hears, no, about uh, their efforts. So the fourth trait is no common sense is completely new. So relative to its past iterations, any common sense has within in the accrual of past versions of itself. So we already noted that the Beatles' music was once avant-garde, no, but it is now considered today as classic. So to put this point slightly differently, um, present day popular music has within in the genes of the Beatles innovation. So similarly, an X designates that here the Eiffel Tower in this figure, Parisians now hated the new tower when construction began in 1887. So in fact, uh, there was an author that ate his lunches. So he is Maupassant, 37 years of age. So he ate his lunches at the base of the tower just to avoid looking at it. No, so but today, removing the Eiffel Tower from from Paris would be unconscionable. No, the Eiffel Tower is one example of how cutting edge creations eventually become accepted. No, and how that acceptance in turn informs current practices. No, in the case of Eiffel Tower, its enormous height, no, enabled by structural iron, is now commonplace in skyscrapers built of structural steel. So the cultural memory of a common sense therefore has depth, no, as the outlooks of layers and layers of past cultures remain within. So this leads to all sorts of contemplations on the ability of history to teach us about current events or about the attractions we have for antiques, no, retro design, or even about the possibility that past innovation may not be recognized as important until subsequent common sense centuries later receives it for the significant development that it was. So there. Um, so so we all live, no, in inside the cultural outlook of our communal common sense. So even if we try to break free from the particular set of values of our common sense, so this still requires an engagement with these values from within. So this chapter underlines how impactful this philosophical interiority, you know, can be as design finds expression in physical forms and environment. So philosophical interiority is not a term Wang uses in this chapter. So, but we suggest this term captures the idea that all people live within the ideological space created as their culture. Answers Baumer's five questions. No, as we read, think about the cultural common sense you live in. Would answer this question: how this impacts our design decisions. So that's it. So So this is how um, the Bomer's 5 questions, no, are applied to each of the um, times, no. One is here applied to the medieval common sense, and the other one is um, common sense in Europe, no, from 1850 to mid 20th century. So on the first figure 6.4, so who is God? So in the medieval times, who, uh, the answer to this question is all powerful source of the cosmos as a divine creation. So second, what is human being? Who is human being? So their answer is fallen from grace but redeemable through the auspices of the church by means of its sacraments and liturgical practices, connecting the pertinent to the Christ. So what is nature? The cosmos filled with the presence of God and his work of salvation, expressed in all natural forms as symbols. So nature is enchanted. So, what is society? Society and church were generally indistinguishable. So, to be in good standing in the medieval society was to be in church, no? So, excommunication meant something tantamount to non existence. So, what is history? So, for human life, it is a brief journey to heaven. So, there was an historian, Barbara Tuchman, notes that there was not a unified calendar during medieval times, suggesting that the temporal time was not something to be coordinated and documented in chronological order. So, the second one, Franklin's Bomber's 5 questions, any culture must answer. So, here applied to the common sense in Europe, from 1850 to the mid 20th century. So, their answer to the first question, what is God? So Bacon's era gravitated towards deism. God is removed, and nature work in accord with its own God-given laws. Then, what is or who is human being? Enlightenment, humanism emphasized human autonomy with increasing confidence that human reason, by a scientific method, can explain all phenomena. And then, what is nature? Nature can be studied empirically and armed with scientific knowledge. Human reason can manipulate nature for human use. So, the fourth one, what is society? Society and church increasingly separated, with the intelligentsia promoting human reason over divine revelation. So, this led to the view that the society can be autonomously defined among humanist values of social contract, no, or the supremacy of the ruler. So, what is history? Inductive reason laid to the philosophical groundwork for the idea of progress. So, today is better than yesterday because of the powers of scientific methods. So, in this, uh, we can conclude the conclusion of the chapter reflects on the changes in cultural values and ideas, since the publication of Adrian Fortes' Objects of Desire in 1986. So it highlights how our current societal norms, known as common sense, have shifted and how these changes affect the design of residential spaces. So one significant shift is the growing emphasis on sustainable design, which has become widely accepted since Fortis this study. And additionally, advancement in information technology have transformed the way we work, blurring the boundaries between work and home life. So this has led to a rise in remote work, with more people than ever working from home. So the discussion explores how electronic connectivity has reshaped the concept of workspace, with entire neighborhoods becoming interconnected workspaces, no? Initiatives like Zappos co-working experiment demonstrate how shared workspaces are emerging in unexpected places, now fostering collaboration among diverse groups of people. So also the chapter examines the evolution of interior design in relation to the philosophical currents embedded within our culture's common sense. So it contrasts medieval ideas of communal living with a modern emphasis on individualism and privacy. So by understanding these cultural shifts, designers can create spaces that align with contemporary values while acknowledging historical influences. Overall, the conclusion encourages designers now to consider the philosophical underpinnings of our culture's common sense and how this influence design decisions. So by doing so, designers can create spaces that reflect the needs and values of today's society. So that ends my report. Thank you.